Go ahead.
Thank you. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you this year's speaker selection of the FOOF Animal Ministry Chapter, Dr. Mark Bekoff. Dr. Mark Bekoff is a cognitive ethologist, biologist, behavioral ecologist, and professor emeritus of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Colorado Boulder. An international speaker and author, Dr. Bekoff has published more than 40 books and 50 essays. He is a former Guggenheim Fellow, and he has won numerous awards for his research on animal behavior, animal emotions, compassionate conservation, and animal protection. He works closely with Dr. Jane Goodall as the co-chair of the Ethics Committee of the Jane Goodall Institute. He is the co-founder of the Jane Goodall Institute of Ethologists for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Citizens for Responsible Animal Behavior Studies. And he is an ambassador for Jane Goodall's International Roots and Shoots program, working with students of all ages, senior citizens, and prisoners. In June 2022, Dr. Bekoff was recognized as a hero by the Academy of Dog Trainers. So please help give Dr. Bekoff a warm virtual welcome, please. Thank you, Dr. Bekoff.
Well, thank you for having me visit with you. So what I was going to do is just talk for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then open it up to questions. And so one of the things I was going to get to as a case study of some of the issues I'm going to be covering is the fact that Colorado basically stole 10 wolves from Oregon and put them out here back in December of 2023. And I was at the release, and I've been intimately tied into that program. So I'm going to use them as a case study after I get done telling you about some of the things that I do. So first of all, I'm an ethologist, which is basically a biologist studying animal behavior. So I take an evolutionary perspective on questions about animal behavior. I'm also a field worker. I've done long-term studies of coyotes in the Grand Teton National Park, and I studied Adelie penguins in Antarctica and various birds living in the foothills of Boulder, Colorado. I don't know. Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So that's my view if you've ever been here. Those are the flatirons. That's basically surround Boulder. So I'm going to talk about some topics that may seem unrelated to you, but they all focus on a common theme of treating other animals with respect and dignity and honoring the fact that they have a right to live just like we have a right to live. I'm also going to stress that caring and having compassion and feeling kindness for animals aren't radical feelings or views. In fact, we work hard to normalize them and make them business as usual. And to me, a lot of it comes down to a matter of decency, that we just need to behave decently to other animals, including other human animals. And, one of my bottom lines is that the world really needs more kindness. Um, and people who care for animals aren't some sort of vegan contrarians, because sometimes that's what people call us. So Yeah, it's always difficult to do this not in person, but that's okay. So there's just a couple of common points I'll be talking about and around, and one is just the notion of speciesism and our views of other animals. And speciesism really is a view that typically places humans above and separate from other animals. And that results in what we call anthropocentrism. And that's basically the view that we're the center of everything on Earth and everything revolves around us. And once again, that oftentimes these views spill into the view that we are above and separate from, better than, more intelligent than, more emotional than, you can fill in the blank, other animals, which of course is false. We're all special. We all have special needs. We all can perform different behavior patterns that others can't form. You know, we don't fly, we don't swim underwater. I mean, we try to swim underwater, but we don't communicate using ultraviolet light, et cetera, et cetera. So there's other animals who do fascinating things. Another important concept is that individuals matter. And I'll get back to that when I talk about wolves, because a lot of conservation protocols trade off individuals for the good of species. There's something called the North American model for wildlife conservation, which would trade off an individual wolf or coyote or bee or moth or fish for the good of their species. And when I talk about, excuse me, compassionate conservation, um, I'll make the claim and try to support the claim that the lives of every individual matter simply because they're alive and they have what we call intrinsic or inherent value. And some of what I talk about, if you live with a cat or a dog or other companion animal, um, you could apply to them as well. That every individual wants to live the life they're supposed to live, pain-free, and not being abused in the name of humans. So I'll get back to that. Um, another topic I'll mention now, but I won't really talk about because I think it's useless to, is when we talk about the emotional lives or sentience of other animals, that they're feeling beings, that we're being anthropomorphic. And I have no idea what that really means. So I'm just talking about who the animals are, not using humans as, if you will, the template against whom other animals should be compared. So sometimes when we say that, animals feel jealousy and they feel embarrassment, pain, joy, grief, people say, well, you're just being anthropomorphic, as if we're the only ones who have these feelings. And once again, I just tell people who doubt this, go live with a dog, go get a companion cat. But I'm also hesitant because when I think people make these claims that we're the only feeling organisms, if you will, they're the very people I would not want to live with a dog or a cat. So, so anyway, yeah, that's kind of the things. So I'm just going to talk about sentience for a few minutes because it's a word that a lot of people don't know what it means, but it's really appearing more and more in not only in scientific and philosophical literature, but in popular literature, in newspapers and magazines. So sentience simply means the ability to feel. That's really all it means. Philosophers can, if you will, write volumes about sentience, and depending on what side of the fence they're on, they can say, well, humans are the only sentient beings, or sentience is broadly distributed, but only among vertebrates. But there's a lot of work now that show really clearly that invertebrates, cephalopods, lobsters, for example, and different insects um, have feelings. So once again, I call it the biodiversity of sentience, and that's something that's really being picked up a lot around the world. So as an evolutionary biologist, the main question to me is why sentience or animal emotions have evolved, not if they have evolved. And what that really means is what are they good for? Why have they been retained? Just like two eyes, two ears, two nostrils, one mouth, our bodies. Um, why have they evolved and why have they been retained over millions of years of evolution? So skeptics really have no basis for questioning if animals are sentient. Some people like to talk about what we call degrees of sentience. Oh, well, yeah, dogs are sentient, but they're not as sentient as us. Uh, Birds may be sentient, but they're not as sentient as mammals. Fish may be sentient, but they're not as sentient as birds or mammals, et cetera, et cetera. And talking about degrees of freedom to me is inane because really a lot of times it's applied to the pleasures and pains of life. And my take, and it's not only my take, but I'm one of the first people to really have talked much about this, is that an individual's pain is their pain, and that we shouldn't be questioning whether or not they really are in pain, if you will, because they are in pain. And that's just the reality of what's going on for them. Um, Science shows that there's a lot of surprises about sentience and emotions. So once again, one surprise might be to think that lobsters don't like being dropped into hot water. I don't think they do. And once again, there's a lot of research around the world on these questions. And in the United Kingdom, lobsters and other cephalopods are protected from being caused intentional harm or pain. So the more sentience is studied, the more species fall under the umbrella of, if you will, um, being sentient. So let's see. Da, 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 da. So, just summarizing this section on sentience and emotions, it's time to move forward and very important to use the ability to feel in making decisions about individual animal well-being. So, um, the notion of sentience and the ability to feel is central to a real growing area of conservation. And I'll bring this back in when I talk a bit about the wolves, because perhaps since we stole them from Oregon, some of you might be concerned and have, and I'm sure you'll have meaningful questions about it. So compassionate conservation is really a rapidly growing global discipline. It's fully a scientific discipline, and one of the basic tenets of compassionate conservation is that individuals matter. Every single individual's well-being matters. And one of the first principles is first do no harm. It's almost like the Hippocratic oath that doctors take, but of course not all of them follow. Um, but but it's really important that we don't harm other animals and that we consider the life of every individual to be equally valuable um, as we intrude or trespass into their lives for one or another reason. So let me consider the bringing wolves from Oregon into Colorado. We also brought 15 wolves in from British Columbia. So here's just a really brief history, and some of you may know about it, some may not, some may know more than others. So in December of 2023, 10 wolves from Oregon were brought here. They were trapped and captured in Oregon, flown here, and released on the west slope of the Rockies in Colorado. I was there, and the whole operation of trapping, tranquilizing, doing the physical exams, if you will, of the wolves in Oregon, and then flying them and releasing here was really impeccably done by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I mean, I may have certain feelings that'll become clear to you and others about doing these reintroduction programs in the first place. But as far as the protocol and how it was done, it was really done well. So for those 10 wolves, they subsequently did exactly what we wanted them to do here. They found a mate, they had a family, the mom and dad had children, and they were doing really well, except because they were feeding on livestock. I don't like that term, but sheep and goats and cows, um, who are really easy prey. It's like room service for wolves. The first Copper Creek pack was decimated by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, CPW, and they were actually the future DNA of future Colorado wolves. Um, just the science, the science clearly shows that interfering in the lives of these wild animals can have very negative consequences for the animals. So when the Copper Creek pack were trapped using foothold, leg hold traps, the male was captured, the father. He was put in a holding cage and he died. Um, the results of the necropsy still have not been made, fully more than a year later when you could have those results almost instantaneously. The wolf had previously been shot, so we don't know whether that contributed to his demise or whether he was just so stressed out and whacked out from being separated from his family. So the mother and four pups were then put in captivity. CPW missed one of the pups, and I'll come back to that pup because he basically was on his own. The reason CPW trapped these animals was because they were eating cows and they were eating other livestock. And it's a fact that a lot of the ranchers out here were not doing all they could do to protect their food animals. So a lot of the onus, the burden, I don't consider it a burden. I mean, they should have done more to protect their um, livestock. The reason that CPW trapped and put them in a cage was they wanted to change their feeding habits so that they wouldn't feed on domestic animals, like, say food animals. They would prefer elk and deer and moose and other animals who were around. But that's absurd too, because science, if they had paid attention to the science, they would have seen clearly that that's impossible. You can't undo millions of years of evolution of a species' meal plans by putting them in cages for a few months and then hoping that they would no longer go for easy to catch prey. Wolves and other carnivores are who we call prudent predators. So are we, by the way. We just try to, I mean, I don't know about you all, but, if someone wants to give me a meal and it's something that I eat, then I'll eat it and save the time and energy for other things. But in the wild, predation is a real time and energy consuming activity. So when you can get an easy meal, that's what you're going to do. You're going to go for the easy meal. So what's happened, just to wrap it up. So as of now, 15 of the 25 total wolves are no longer with us. As I mentioned, in January of 2025, so just this year, a little more than a year after the Oregon wolves were released, 15 wolves from British Columbia were brought here, and many of them have already suffered a fate. Now, with respect to the one pup from the original Copper Creek pack, he was on his own and survived a year, at least a year on his own, making it, trying to get food, getting food. And about a month ago, he was shot by Colorado Parks and Wildlife for killing 3 sheep on public land. Um, First of all, they were on public land, and CPW could only verify that he had killed 1 sheep. So what goes around comes around. Unfortunately, this was a wolf, an individual young wolf, who was able to survive on his own and basically live. And then he was killed by CPW for being for taking an easy meal, at least one. So, so where does this all land for me? And then I'm certainly open to questions. Um, with respect to reintroduction programs, I mean, they really are intrusive on an individual's lives. Um, the wolves from Oregon who were taken here, the packs were broken up in Oregon, and nobody knows what happened to the remaining members of their family groups from which they were taken. And the wolves from British Columbia, they were going to be shot up there. So the carnivore experts I know up there were saying, sure, we'll ship wolves, although they didn't really want to, we'll ship wolves to Colorado because they'll be killed down there rather than being killed up in British Columbia. So what these studies show, and I think it's a really important point, is that these individual wolves and other animals become very they become pawns in political schemes. I mean, the people of Colorado voted to bring the wolves here, and that was done to have them um, not become, um, say, not become political pawns, if you will. But there's no way that that was not going to happen. So right now, what's going on the ground is that very little has been done by Colorado Parks and Wildlife to help pro-wolf people along. And with the anti-wolf people, it's just been a succession and an increasing number of demands. And as of a couple of weeks ago, there were 29 agencies and groups, and now it's almost up to 50 who want to end the project totally. So the efforts um, they're not veiled attempts to end the program, but a lot of money's gone into the program. So once again, it's become a fill in the blank storm because so much money and time and effort of well-meaning people have been put into the project, but yet now people want to end it. Right now, we don't have a sustainable number. I gave you the numbers, so only about 60% or maybe fewer, a lower percentage of wolves who we brought here are alive. And the biology, the scientific research shows that we need a survival rate of at least 70% to have a sustaining population over time. So, yeah, I just ended up, the example I use, if somebody told me that I only had a 60% chance of getting to the store or university when I left my home, I'd probably say no, thank you. And, think about your dog. All wolves, all dogs come from a common wolf ancestor. So if you took your dog to a dog park or brought your dog somewhere to do something and they only had a 60% chance of surviving that, would you do it? And no one I've asked, thank goodness, have said they would. So basically, I'm certainly open to questions, but a very simple review of what I just told you is simply that we intrude into their lives. People call people who are interested, or often call people who are interested in animal well-being radicals, as if we're kind of on the outside of reality. And what we're trying to do, and been trying to do it for decades, is normalize the respectful treatment of individual animals. That it's the decent thing to do. So we're not the radicals. By normalizing compassion for other animals, it's the people who abuse other animals who would be the quote radicals. And I think that's really important because people have written me off. I work with Jane Goodall very closely. They'll say, well, you're just the radicals. You're kind of on the edge of society. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness gracious, I hope that that's not true because there's a move called a very big initiative called the One Health movement that, based on solid biological and sociological and psychological research, that shows how we interact with other animals is very much related to how we interact with other humans. So showing compassion and kindness for non-humans spills over into showing compassion and kindness for humans. So now I'll get off my pulpit. Well, I'm actually sitting on my couch. Um, and I'm open for questions, clarification, or hearing your views. I really love doing this, and as I understand what your group is all about, it's one that I would certainly strongly support because part of advancing the interests, I don't want to say the rights because that stimulates conversations I don't want to go get into, but advancing the freedoms, that's the word I really use, of other animals and their interests in living a good life. I mean, if you live with a dog or cat or a fish or bird, other companion animals, or you go off into, outside and you watch wild animals, you can see that they have evolved very complicated strategies for surviving. And now, in addition to surviving in a world among the non-human wild neighbors with whom they interact, they have to adapt to intrusions and trespasses into their life by humans. So there you go.
Woo!
So I'm open to questions, nice questions. I could always turn my computer off. No, I'm only kidding.
Uh,
But yeah, and not only questions, but just hearing from you. I mean, a
Thank
lot of
you,
what I
Dr.
what
Bekoff,
I
so much.
do. What's
I'm
that?
wondering,
Yeah.
this introduction of the wolves in Colorado, so there's obviously people that really wanted that to happen. How could the powers that be not know the
That's it.
fate of those wolves, given how much ranching there is and livestock raising in Colorado? Like, it just seems so poorly thought out. Do you have any idea? I know that was not your idea, but I'm wondering if you have any thought about the logic or where the intelligence failed on this project of reintroduction.
Your question's a really good one. So part of it was the long term. It was the project was a long term was a long time in the planning. And so built into the protocol for the project, not only, I mean, the whole project itself, ranchers, farmers, people who raise food animals, farm animals, are supposed to do all they can to protect the animals. And there's a lot of non-lethal methods for doing it, from just shaking a soda can with coins in it, putting out flagging, cleaning up carcasses because a lot of animals just die of natural causes, and other events like that. So there was a concern, but a lot of people, including myself, who had read the 268-page project and thought I was going to go blind, really wanted non-lethal management to be on the table when the wolves were brought here, because there was a lot of resentment from people, and understandable. I mean, I have no problem with ranchers and farmers being stakeholders in these sorts of projects, just like other humans are, and just like the wolves are. But that really didn't work. And so, in all honesty, when the number of predatory encounters that resulted in death of farm animals is very low, actually, and they're compensated really well. One rancher got, I think, $350,000 for losing some cows and or sheep. So your question's a good one, but I personally was a fan of bringing them here and having non-lethal management be the only option, if you will.
Right, but obviously you didn't get the support you needed for that to be a shared agreement.
Right, right. And so, it's very possible. Sometimes pro-wolf people get upset with me, but no, I did years of studying wild coyotes decades ago outside of Jackson, Wyoming, in the Grand Teton National Park. So I am definitely sensitive to the farmers and the ranchers who are trying to raise their animals, and it's an economic loss. I mean, so, but no, I don't know. It's hard to know whether the wolf plan, how it would have gone if non-lethal management um, was the only show in town, if you will.
Right.
It's we don't know, but what's happening right now? I mean, it's fact filled. I mean, I could easily send you, and if anybody wants, you can send me your email address, and I'll send you, the data or their public information. But a lot of the cases where wolves did go in and take a cow or a calf, well, I mean, calves or calf, or sheep, um, the animals were not protected. There were no non-lethal efforts made. So that's been a problem. Um,
Thank you, Dr.
and
Bekoff. We're going to move to another question because so many people have questions.
oh, good.
We might be here till tomorrow. Just kidding. Dr. Ruth Miller is next, then Dion, then Renee, and then anyone else will be after them. Thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Bekoff, my name is Ruth Miller, and I have some experience in the academic world. And my question is, how did you get from traditional notions, the anthropocentric model, if you will, to where you are now within the academic world?
Well, it was tough, to be quite frank with you, but it's really the science supports it. I mean, with respect to wolves and other animals, and I'll, once again, I can send you an essay I wrote recently with a lot of references in it. That non-lethal control just doesn't really work. I mean, it's a quick fix. You get rid of a wolf who's eating another animal, cows or sheep, or a coyote. But if it worked, why do the problems revisit? Why are they just rekindling all the time? Because non-lethal control doesn't work. But the North American model for wildlife conservation has been the predominant model that people follow. And in that model, killing members of one species to help members of the same or other species is business as usual.
Okay,
So,
I get where you're going there, but that
yeah,
really wasn't my question, sir.
okay. You
My
mean
question,
how did I survive?
how did you turn from the traditional thinking about humans and animals to your obviously very opposite approach? There
Yeah,
was a turning point in your understanding, and I'd like to know what that is so I can help others make that turn.
sure. No, I appreciate that. That's how I felt when I was 2 years old.
Ah,
And no, it really is something that I grew up with my very empathic mother and my very optimistic father. And I'm not being light about it at all. I wrote a book called Minding Animals that came out in 2002. And it came from conversations I had with my folks when I was a kid. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And I survived that. And so, but I was always asking my folks what the dogs and the cats and the ants and the birds in the neighborhood were thinking and feeling. So and I dropped out of a very prestigious program as a grad student because I didn't want to harm animals in the research. So I'm not being superficial by saying that. That's how I always felt. But part of it was because when I was a grad student and then when I started doing field work, I paid really careful attention to the fact that these animals are individuals, their lives are valuable, they have feelings, they're sentient beings, and that killing them does not work. It's really hard to find a program where killing these animals or killing specific animals has really succeeded in saving their or other species. I mean, it's obvious that you kill a wolf in a ranch in Colorado or in Oregon or Washington, those animals may be protected. But more and more data are coming out, and there was just two recent studies that were published that shows in the big picture, killing wolves, if they focused on wolves, does not really decrease predation.
Thank you, Dr. Bekoff.
Sure, thank you.
Dion is next, and then Renee. And was there another one? Do I want to see a hand that will go after Renee, or she'll be our last one? Okay, Dion, please. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Bekoff. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Good. So my question is, maybe this is just obvious and I don't understand, but I didn't understand why this program began to begin with. What was the rationale
Sure.
for taking them out of Oregon?
Nope, that's a great question. So there was a lot of talk of reintroducing native species to Colorado, and wolves would be one of them who were basically extirpated. They were killed by humans about 90 to 100 years ago. So it became a ballot issue, enough signatures, and then it got on the ballot. So it was actually voted by the people of Colorado to bring them here. That's really how it all happened. And it was a close vote, but majority rules, and that's how wolves wound up in Colorado. And Oregon was one of the few places that would give wolves to Colorado. There were some places that didn't want to share their wolves. So that's basically how it happened. That wolves are here. It was a vote of the people.
So just one question.
Sure.
So were they being killed in Oregon?
Well, some were, and lethal is on the table there. Um, and some people joked, and I didn't think it was a joke at all. Once again, is well, they can go to Colorado, and we can hope they'll live there, but they may not. But yeah, so Oregon, the other states. Although now I understand that it's really hard to find places that want to give us wolves. But yeah, so it would be like very similar to the situation in British Columbia. British Columbia has a war on wolves. They're killing hundreds of wolves, maybe not as we speak, but recently. So they're happy to get rid of their wolves to send them to Colorado.
Thank you, Dr. Bekoff. This is our last question, just because we're out of time. We could be here for another month, though. This is Renee.
Dr. Bekoff, thank you so much for making time for us in your busy schedule. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
I finished your book, one of your books, The Emotional Lives of Animals, last night. I found it incredibly informative and touching and tearful in many chapters. I'd like to move beyond the wolves, if I could, and
Sure.
ask you your, I think one of the chapters is called By the Numbers.
Hmm.
And on the farm, it's not who we eat, it's who we eat, not what we eat.
Hmm.
And I found your numbers about the land animals and the farm fishes that we destroy and eat every year, just absolutely staggering, in the millions and the billions.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if you see any progress in the United States, especially in the welfare of animals, or in trends where we think of the animals that we eat in a different manner, in a more compassionate manner. Thank you.
It's a great question. I think there's some progress. Certainly not. I have a section in that book, probably at the end, is why I get cranky. and, and there's progress being made, but not fast enough. And the sheer number of animals who are killed for food is increasing. And in the last year, the number of pigs who could go to slaughter in industrialized slaughterhouses per minute or per hour has actually increased. A lot of people don't know that. So it's a great question. I'd like to believe it's getting better, but the other argument that's extremely compelling for people are the ecological consequences of, say, factory farms and other uh, food industries, food production industries, but and of course health. So I mean, I'll be honest, I've been vegan for years, I've been vegetarian for even more years, and I'm not militant about it. I mean, in the end, I wish the world were vegan or vegetarian, but I think people should have the right to choose who they eat, if you will, not what they eat, because you're eating sentient beings who are who's, not whats or that's. Um, but I do think that more and more people on their own, regardless of laws and regulations, are changing their diets slowly. Sometimes that's okay for economic and or health reasons. But I do think that farm animals, food animals, really need a lot more formal protection, if you will.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bekoff. We can't tell you how appreciative and grateful we are for your time, for your expertise, and sharing with us to increase our own awareness about animals in our world. So thank you very much. Please give Dr. Bekoff a hand. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm one of my few colleagues who actually answer emails.
Can you repeat that?
Oh, I said, feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm one of the few academics, although I've left the university, who actually answer emails. But no, I mean, I'm really thrilled to be here. It's just coincidental that the wolves came from Oregon, but there's just a lot of really open questions about human, non-human relationships. And one thing I am very happy about is more and more public media. That's why I work with Jane Goodall. That's why I write books for the masses, are raising these issues and bringing them to a broader public. It's not a bunch of people sitting in their ivory towers pondering how we should treat other animals. As far as I'm concerned, we should treat them all individuals, with respect and dignity. And that should be the normal way, not the reverse of where they become disposable objects like couches or TVs or toasters. So there you have it. And think of your companion dogs. One of the arguments I've made that has been very, very compelling is, would you do it to your dog? Would you treat your dog like some of the wolves are being treated? Would you treat your dog like some food animals or clothing animals, foxes on fur farms are being treated? I'm not doing it to be difficult. It's just they all have sentient, they're all sentient. They all have their individual pleasures and pains. So I think it's a fair question. And I had people ask me that, well, how would you treat your dog? And I think my dogs, when I lived in the mountains, I don't have dogs now, I'm living in town, had great lives. But I'm not trying to irritate people. I'm trying to get them to think more deeply about who these other animals are and the shared qualities, the qualities we share with them in terms of emotions and sentience and intelligence. That's all I'm asking people to do.
Thank you again, Dr. Bekoff. Thank you. We'll see you soon, we hope. Thank you.
Great.
Bless
Thank you.
you.